It's that time of the week where Stephanie Dobson joins us. Stephanie is a lawyer, mediator, and online educator with Hankin Divorce Law and Mediation offices in Edmonton and Lloydminster. Time for another episode of Healthy Thriving Family After Divorce. Stephanie, thanks once again for joining me this week.
Thanks again, Stacey.
We have been talking so far this month about spousal support. It's been the focus of the past couple of episodes, and we're going to continue and wrap up with that today. So, specifically, we're going to be talking about what happens when one spouse retires, which obviously can change things. So, let's talk about why that would even matter, why retirement would even matter when it comes to spousal support.
Well, just so everyone can remember our episode, maybe from last week, or if you didn't happen to see last week, there's spousal support can be changed in one of two ways, either by doing a review of spousal support or a variation of spousal support. So in the context of retirement, spousal support could be reviewed, that quote, reviewed, if the court order or agreement actually states that support is to be reviewed when one spouse retires. So essentially, it's provided for in the documentation. For a variation, that word variation, the applicant wanting to change would have to prove that there's what's called a material change of circumstances since the original order was made or the agreement was reached. So retirement could certainly be considered a material change of circumstances, but it depends on the facts. And there's been an interesting recent case out of the former Court of Queen's Bench of Alberta called Kelly and Gammon that was back in 2022, which actually talked about the impact of retirement on support. So we'll talk a little bit about that today.
Okay, and how do we know for sure that retirement qualifies for the term material change of circumstances?
You got the lingo down already, Stacey? The opening question in the decision of Kelly and Gammon is exactly this. So the court had to decide whether the retirement was, quote, reasonable in the circumstances so as to result from a material change warranting a change to the spousal support. So the answer in that case was yes. So allow me to explain. So in that case, the paying spouse's income at the time of the original order was about $186,000. And at the time of the original order, it had actually been contemplated that retirement was on the horizon and that this event happening would meet that materiality test. So the question in that case then became, was the timing and the circumstances of the retirement defensible, or was it done specifically to circumvent the spousal support obligation?
Okay, so then the next question is what goes into the defensibility of retirement?
Yeah, so the retirement has to be defensible. So I thought I would give a few examples of where the retirement has been seen as defensible or reasonable. So one such example is where a payor, so the person paying support, their lifelong plans for retirement. So in the case of Lewis and Lewis, that was back in 2009 in the former Court of Queen's Bench of Alberta, the decision of when to retire from the lifelong career, the court saw as a very personal matter and should not be interfered with without exceptional circumstances. Second, evidence that the payor qualified to take their full pension. So that's, again, another way that it's seen to be reasonable. Now, on the flip side to this, depending on the circumstances, the choice to take early retirement could work against the payor looking to change support. And the third example is the discussions during the retire relationship as to retirement plans. So the court in Kelly and Gammon states that it's not reasonable to have had plans during the relationship to plan to retire at a certain age and then argue that those plans are no longer reasonable post-separation.
Okay, so if retirement then is a material change of circumstances, then what? Where do we go from there?
Right. So again, once we figured out that question, then the question becomes, what do we do with that support award? Does the support award get reduced? Does it get terminated? Is there a limitation put on it? There's a few options, of course. So the question really comes down to whether the court will accept that retirement is reasonable and justified in the circumstances. And if so, then the question is, what is the income of the paying spouse post-retirement and how much, if anything, will be payable going forward? And if the retirement was not seen as reasonable and justified, then the court can set an income level that it deems reasonable for the purpose of paying spousal support, pretending like the paying spouse was not retired. So
All right.
it gets complicated.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to just say that it's really intricate. A lot of the things are involved, and that's why it's best to deal with somebody who is a specialty in this area, which is obviously someone like yourself. So, thank you,
Thanks,
Stephanie,
Stacey.
for clearing that up a little bit for us this week. And as always, people can go back and look at previous episodes if they want to see this whole theme in the series for the month of June. So, thank you
Yeah,
again, Stephanie, for joining me, and we'll chat with you next week.
thanks, Stacey.